You may be seated. Our scripture reading is found on the back of your bulletin again, the story of the demoniac, Mark 5. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart, and he broke the irons on his feet. And no one was strong enough to subdue him. And night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and he fell on his knees in front of him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs were feeding on the nearby hillside, and the demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs and allow us to go unto them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits, they came out and they went into the pigs. And the herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and squealed. They reported this in town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told the people about the pigs as well. And then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell it in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. When Linda and I went on our tour of the Holy Lands, we got to take a boat trip on the Sea of Galilee, and as we were on the boat trip, we could look to the east and we could see the region of the Gerasenes where this particular event took place. Now, there is some debate among scholars as to where exactly this demon-possessed man would have been from, because one of the translations tells us from the Gadarenes, which is the town over here to the right, and then other places say it was down here towards the left. But either way, you can see from that picture how steep the cliffs are, and how the pigs probably were somewhere up near the top of the cliff, and Jesus would have met this man somewhere down on the beach. You know, there's a place where the beach is narrow and a place where the beach is really, really wide. This probably took place where the beach was narrower. And then the pigs came rushing down the hillside and across the short stretch of beach and into the ocean where they had drowned. This morning, though, I want you to put yourself in the story a little bit, because we're going to look at three different people or three different things in this story. The first thing is we want to look at the demoniac himself. What do you think this guy looked like? I mean, we were told that he was naked, that he didn't wear clothes anymore. Can you imagine what his eyes must have looked like? They must have been large and wild looking. That when you looked into his eyes, all you saw was evil and destruction. He had bruises and cuts all over his body because he was taking rocks and he was gashing himself, and the demons were making him destroy himself, trying to kill him and hurt himself. He's alone. He lives in the tombs. He has been exiled from the community, so he lives in the graveyard in a shallow cave. This man is already as good as dead. And so he is living in the tombstones already. He is the boogeyman that parents tell their children will get them if they're not good. He is the relative that nobody wants to claim. He is the outcast of the society that everybody is embarrassed to admit is from their community. This guy has almost superhuman strength now. They had tried to bind him for his own protection and for the protection of others, and yet he would always burst out of these bonds. He is demon possessed. Something has taken control of him, is what we are told. Now, when we think about this story a little bit, though, who are the demon possessed in our society? Can you think of some of them? Now, I've visited with missionaries who have been particularly in South America and Asia, who have encountered actual demon possessions. Millie, if she hasn't had experiences with it, probably knows missionaries who have. I knew a missionary from Haiti who witnessed demon possession on numerous occasions. Frightening, terrifying things that you see with that. But here in the United States, in the West, anything that sounds like the supernatural, we want to discard it. We don't want to talk about actual demon possessions. But there is a pseudo-demon possession, which has all the same symptoms of demon possession in our society today. Demon possessions of alcoholism, of drug abuse, of mental illness, of disease, of suffering mental and emotional trauma. Look at that picture there. That is a 1-year difference picture between a young lady who is addicted to heroin. Demon possession. Changed her figure, her look. She's gone from looking normal to looking frightening and wild. Now, how do people get like this? How do people get possessed by demons? Well, sometimes we get possessed by demons because of bad choices and bad decisions that we make. You can flirt with evil and with the supernatural, and you leave a gateway, an opening into your life that horrible things can begin to happen to you. You can make bad choices of messing with alcohol and drugs and pornography, and these things begin to actually change your brain chemistry and to warp you and allow you to start doing things that you would normally never do. It can be self-inflicted. But sometimes demon possession is the result of another person's evil upon you. People who get caught up in human trafficking, who have become slaves to other people, and the mental and emotional damage that it does to them. To little boys who get captured and become children's soldiers, child soldiers, and are taught to kill other people and the incredible damage that it does to them. I heard a story, and I've heard the story numerous times, about one little boy in Nigeria who was captured by one of these warlords. He and his 2 brothers, and the warlord put a pistol in his hand and told him he had to choose between his 2 brothers as to which one he was going to kill. And if he didn't kill them, all 3 of them would be shot. What does that do to somebody? To have that type of a stress put upon you. I think supernatural demon possessions happen today. Some people, demons take over their lives, but I also know, and gosh, Dave Kimmerly can tell us about demon possessions that he's seen in prison, and of the alcohol and the drug use and the evil things that he has seen, and the destruction that it does. And so how are they treated? What does our society do? We do the same thing that we find that happens here in the Scriptures, that they're ignored, that they are institutionalized, that we throw them in prison, or we put them in mental hospitals, or they're driven out of the community so that they have to live in the tombs, or they live in the streets. This man from the Gerasenes, he was beyond counseling. He was beyond hope. He was beyond education. This man, his only solution was to encounter Jesus. And people who are wrestling with addictions and mental illnesses and these sorts of things, they need counseling, but my guys say also they need Jesus. They need Jesus because that's the only real solution that we're going to find. How are we like the demoniac? What's destroying you? One of the most disturbing things that I see is the young girls who cut themselves. Does that not sound like a type of demon possession, to do that kind of harm to yourself in order to try to feel good, to deal with depression in your life? You see, we just have a tendency now we're more sophisticated in hiding the things that are destroying us, that are tearing us apart. And yet the things that are tearing us apart are bad decisions that we make, carrying grudges, not forgiving sins, not forgiving ourselves, thinking that we've done something that nobody could ever forgive us of. And these things, they start to work on us and to destroy us and to tear us. The story that happens just immediately prior to the healing of the demoniac is that Jesus has got just through teaching the crowd, and he and the disciples, they get in a boat. And they're taking the boat across the sea to where this demoniac man is. And Jesus is sleeping in the front of the boat. And a storm comes up. And the boat is beginning to swamp and to sink. And the disciples, and we need to realize at least 5 of these disciples were experienced sailors. I mean, they were professional fishermen. They spent their whole life out on the sea. And they're so concerned that the boat is sinking that they wake up Jesus. They give up trying to save the ship themselves, the boat themselves, from rowing and all this stuff. And they wake up Jesus and they say, "Do you not care that we are perishing, that we are drowning?" And Jesus simply gets up and he rebukes 2 things. He rebukes the disciples, "Oh, you guys of little faith." And then he stands up and he rebukes the wind and the waves, and he tells it to be calm, and it's calm. And the disciples, they're amazed, and they say, "Even the wind and the waves obey him." In Hebrew thinking, wind and waves and storms on the sea are the sign of the demonic. It's the signs of evil. And so the disciples have just been in the boat, and they have just been rescued from the demonic. They're rowing towards the shore. As they're right up onto the edge of the shore, here comes this crazy guy who's running down the hill, shouting at the top of his lungs and throwing rocks and dirt in the air, saying, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Do you think the disciples were thinking, "Let's go the other way. I don't want to be here anymore. This is not good. We've just survived the sea, and now here's another demoniac that is taking place." And what was happening is that Jesus was already casting the demon out, because in the same way that Jesus cast out and rebuked the wind and the waves, he is already rebuking the demons that are in this man. He's not surprised that this guy's running down the shore. This wasn't something that Jesus was unprepared for. He had been working ahead of time because he has power over the demonic. Well, the purpose of the demons is they want to destroy. They are trying to destroy this man. They are trying to destroy the kingdom of God. That's what demons do. There was a teenage girl one time. She had a boyfriend, and she found out that her boyfriend was going out on her and seeing some other girl. She got mad. So she took his picture and she drew things on it and blacked out the teeth and put devil horns on him and black eyes and zits and all sorts of things like that. And then she took scissors and she cut the whole thing up and threw it in the toilet and flushed it. Now, she wanted to do that to him, but she couldn't. So she did it to the next best thing, his image. The devil wants to destroy God. He can't. So he attacks and attempts to destroy the next best thing. Human beings created in what? The image of God. That's what demons do. They try to destroy the image of God. They try to destroy God. So they attempt to destroy us. Now, one of the things that I notice is that throughout Mark's gospel is that when people address Jesus, they call him Rabbi or Lord or Master, human titles. Whenever the demons or the unclean spirits confront him, they call him by his divine title. They recognize who he is, Son of the Most High God, the Mighty One. They know who he is. Now, part of why they're doing that, and what some scholars speculate, is the ancient thinking that if you know somebody's proper name, who they really are, that you have power over them. Well, you don't have power over God. But the demons probably are trying that. If we can tell Jesus who he really is, that you're the Son of the Most High God, we can have power over him and protect ourselves. They cannot. And so Jesus asks the demons' name. Who are you? He knows. And they're elusive in their answer. They don't tell Jesus who they are. They just say, we're legion, which means a huge Roman army. A legion consists of over 2,000 soldier and cavalry. It's interesting that when they cry out to Jesus saying, do not send us from this area, give us leave to go into the pigs. How many pigs were there? 2,000. A legion's worth that came rushing down to that hill. Satan is still trying to destroy. And the way that he tries to destroy God is he tries to destroy us. He tries to get us to do things that are wicked and evil. He tries to get us to have stinking thinking, to do things, to think things that aren't right, to do things. Have you ever, all of a sudden, you just had some horrible thought come into your mind and you're thinking, where in the world did that come from? Why in the world did that thought pop into my head? That's a demonic attack, trying to get you to think things that are wrong, because if you start to think something is wrong, oftentimes you'll think, oh, I've already thought it, so I might as well do it. Because what I've done, thinking was a sin. And no, it wasn't. It was an attack. Satan takes what is good and he ruins it. He corrupts it. He takes our sexuality and he makes it perverted. He takes our mind and he makes it turn out some of the most corrupt and abusive and crude things you could ever think of. He takes our art and he makes it so that it is rude and disgusting. He takes our literature and he makes it so that it's not purifying at all. He takes everything and spoils it and ruins it. But Jesus casts out demons. He rebukes them. He drives them away. He did it then, and he does it now. You see, you and I, we are involved in spiritual warfare. We don't like to think about that because that's kind of creepy. You don't even like it when your pastors talk about spiritual warfare because it just sounds like something you don't want to hear about and don't want to get involved with. But it's a reality. There is evil out there that is trying to corrupt and to destroy. So the herdsmen, these guys probably are clueless as to what's going on down at the beach. They have dealt with this demoniac before. They probably would, do their best to avoid him because, they didn't want to mess with him because he was the crazy guy who did crazy things and was throwing rocks and cutting himself and hurting himself. And so they probably heard, the demoniac yelling and screaming at Jesus and the disciples as they're coming up on the beach, and they're probably thinking, yeah, we've seen that, show before. That's nothing new. And then all of a sudden, their pigs start acting strange. And then the pigs start running down the hill. And they're probably running after them, trying to get them to turn because they can see that they're heading into disaster. And then all of a sudden the pigs, they have run into the sea and you have a portastrophe. And so they run into town and they squeal on Jesus. Can you imagine the conversation that they must have had? It's incredible. All of our pigs, they ran into the sea and they have drowned. And the crazy man, he was doing all of his crazy stuff. And now all of a sudden he's sane. He's dressed. He's in his right mind. He combed his hair, and he is sitting at the feet of this traveling rabbi, and our pigs are floating out to sea. And the people, the whole town, they come running out to see this incredible pig tragedy. And I think probably they're thinking that they want to lynch Jesus because they've just lost their livelihood. This is they are going to have a pork barbecue tonight. And they're going to have as much sausage as they can salvage. But it's a disaster. It's an economic disaster. And the thing that Mark tells us is that they were more distressed and frightened by seeing the demoniac in his right mind than they were in seeing the pigs drowning and floating in the Sea of Galilee. They had never seen this man like this. He didn't have wild eyes anymore. They were clear. He had dressed himself. He was sitting calmly. And they could tell that he was in his right mind, that he had been healed and he had been restored. Spiritual warfare is scary. It's scary stuff. We don't like to hear about it. We don't like to talk about it. It frightens us. Part of what frightens us, though, is that sometimes we don't want to see other people healed and delivered because we think that the torment that they are suffering, that they deserve it. And if they are healed, it's like they don't deserve that. Why does this alcoholic who has beat up on his wife and hurt his kids, why in the world should he be healed and forgiven? He's a louse. Why that lady who's a drug addict and has abandoned her kids, why should she be healed and forgiven and delivered? She's a terrible person. And we're judgmental. So we watch them, waiting for them to mess up again because we don't think they deserve God's grace. And sometimes we don't want to be healed and delivered ourselves because that means we would lose the excuse to justify the sinful choices and behaviors that we are making. I don't want to be forgiven. I don't want to be healed because then it means I would have to live my life differently. And I don't know if I want to live my life differently than what I am. Jesus doesn't do that. This guy, this demoniac, he might have been a louse from day one. He's not a Jew. He's a Gentile. He's not Jewish. He lives on the other side of the sea. And yet, Jesus heals him and delivers him. He doesn't care your background. He just rebukes the wind and the waves so that even the wind and the waves obey him. He rebukes the demons and he casts them out so that even the wild man becomes sane and in his right mind. Confession heals and delivers. Forgiveness heals and delivers. Compassion heals and delivers. Welcoming heals and delivers. Remember what we've been saying about Mark's gospel? It's not enough just to know what our rabbi knows. We need to do what our rabbi does. Do we? Do we? This man then wanted to go with Jesus. Probably several reasons why he wanted to go. One is he probably didn't want to have to pay for the pigs, as they were going to hold him responsible for it. It might have been that there was so much history now in this community with him that he felt that he couldn't live within the community. You know, maybe he's just done too much damage and just didn't think that he could live there. And regardless, Jesus does something that's actually kind of disturbing, that he doesn't let the man go with him. Instead, he says to him, Go home. Tell your friends and your neighbors what God has done for you. Now, every place else in Mark's story, whenever Jesus heals somebody, he tells the person, don't tell anybody. This is the one case where Jesus says, go. Go and tell everybody. And he does. And he goes throughout the Decapolis, which are the Greek-Roman cities. There's about 10 of them that were on the eastern and the south side of the Sea of Galilee. And he tells everybody what God has done for him. And his reputation is such that everybody knew who he was. And they were amazed. I like to think that this is the way the story wound up. I think that this guy was married. He had children. And whenever he'd come into town before, he was wild, he was naked, he was crazy, and he was yelling and doing things. And people fled from him. And his children ran into the closet and closed the door and hid. And his wife wanted to run away and hide as well, but she would stand in his way to protect the children from him. And this time, most of the town had run out to see this event. And she's looking out the door, and she sees her husband walking up the hill towards her house. And the town people are all around him. And he comes to the door, and he opens the door, and she looks into his eyes, and she sees the man who she married. He's wearing clothes like he was when they were married. He's combed his hair like when she knew him from before. Her husband is back. She's still not sure. The kids are still in the closet. She doesn't know. The town people have made a semicircle around them. He says, honey, something amazing has happened to me. I met Jesus. Let me tell you what's happened to me. Do you need healing and deliverance? Are there things in your life that you need to turn back over to Jesus? Are there sins that you're hanging on to? Are there grudges that you're unwilling to let go? Do you need to meet Jesus again or for the first time so that you can tell an amazing story of look what God has done for me? You need to do that. You can come to the altar. You can just stay at chairs. You can, however you need to deal with it. I hope you don't come run up and yelling and screaming at me like the demoniac did at Jesus. But Jesus still heals today. Let us pray.